I want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to be with you and really talk on a topic that I'm passionate about, and that is the power of asking and its impact on our health, particularly our cancer health. I'm Rob Winn. I am the Cancer Center Director of the Virginia Commonwealth University Massey Comprehensive Cancer Center. That's a big, long word for recognizing that in the country, there are probably well over 6,000 cancer centers. There are only 72, of which I am one of those, that are considered to be NCI, National Cancer Institute, designated. For those of you who don't know the program, it turns out that in 1971, Richard Nixon and Ted Kennedy had a big idea, and that was to use science and to harness the ability from the academic institutions, along with the federal government, in this context, the National Institutes of Health, to take the power of the government and academic programs together to really fight cancer and to come up with not only cures, but fundamental knowledge of how we could better understand cancer and thereby come up with different therapies. Now, arguably, since 1971, many of you have probably, even if you don't know the history, have benefited from the science. It turns out that as we look at women with breast cancers, as we look with men with prostate cancer and colorectal cancer, that from 1973 to 2023, there's a world of difference, with a caveat. It turns out that while the science has been amazing, and while the future is obviously here, it has been unevenly distributed. Let me give you some facts. It turns out that 1 in 3 men, or 1 in 3 women, and 1 in 2 men will wind up with cancer in our lifetime. It also turns out that the truth is that African Americans in particular, and communities that live in persistent poverty, tend to do less well than the general public. What do I mean? Prostate cancer is an example. We know that African American men are twice as likely, more likely to get prostate cancer and to die from prostate cancer compared to their white counterparts. We also know that African American women tend to do less well in the context of breast cancer. In fact, we have even increased rates of breast cancer among our African American women, and we're still trying to figure out what's going on. We can go on. Things like multiple myeloma, which I think famously you may know that this is what ultimately General Colin Powell succumbed to, actually disproportionately impacts African Americans negatively. Endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, there's a whole host. But why am I here? I'm here to bring the power of hope, the power of science, and the power of asking. It has been interesting to me that over the 50 years, we have, as a scientific community, developed miracles. An example of that are women. In fact, a handful of them have recently run in both New York and Boston and all over the country, marathons of women who had stage 4 breast cancer. It turns out that the science, when delivered appropriately and we have access to it, actually does work. The other day, I was riding in a Uber, and I was in California. The driver essentially said to me, "Hey, what do you do? And I told him I was a doctor. He said, oh, what kind of doctor? I said, well, I run a cancer health system and a research center. And his words were amazing. He said, you know what, Doc? He goes, you look trustworthy. He goes, I want to ask you a question. I said, sure. He said, Doc, come on, man. Tell me the truth. It turns out that you guys probably have the cure for cancer, but you're just trying to make money on it, so you're not giving it out to people. And he said, hey, I'm right. It took me a second. I answered him in the affirmative. I said, wow, how'd you know? You should have seen him turn around. He looked in the rearview mirror at me like, what? I knew. And I said, you know what? But one little modification on that. The reality is that the treatments do exist, but they're hiding in plain sight. I said to him, if you had a certain income or luck was on your side and you wind up getting to one of these amazing centers that actually house these miracle drugs, your life, not because Dr. Winn says it, but it's built in the data. And there are things that are objective data. 1 + 1 does equal 2 in most worlds. This is not a conversation for alternative facts. Although people have gone to Dr. TikTok and Dr. Google, I remind people that go to Dr. TikTok and Dr. Google to initiate. But remember, Dr. Google and Dr. TikTok is really an amalgamation and the averaging of millions of patients. Whereas when you see your doctor, there's only one in front of them. As I explained to this Uber driver, I said, we have these miracles, but they're just unevenly distributed. And how do we get these miracles? It turns out there is a word for that, and there are processes called clinical trials. Now, hold on, wait before you tune out. I know what you're thinking. Dr. Winn, you had me, and all of a sudden you lost me. What's going on, man? Why you talk about clinical trials to us? Ain't that just experiment on us? Listen, I'm going to be up front. You can't get rid of the sins that we have created as a country, and including our clinicians and scientists. Tuskegee. That's all you have to say, right? Code word for the United States Public Health syphilis study of 1932 that literally, well, you know the story. Henrietta Lacks, where clearly the pressing to do good science related into harvesting Henrietta Lacks' cells and have good come out of that? Absolutely. But so has the fact that sometimes in our quest for science, we make people and their families also invisible. So I'm coming at you with the following. I know that. Here is what is true in the 21st century. You'll see here a slide that I'm showing you that literally looks at the miracles of clinical trials. It turns out that when the standard of care is reached, meaning that you as a cancer patient or a loved one reaches the end of the standard therapy, which is chemotherapy and the standard practices, in the 21st century, the standard of care is to offer you clinical trials. Now, you may say, Dr. Winn, but aren't they just experimenting? Listen, here's the deal. When you are on a clinical trial, you are getting the standard of care plus. In the world of cancer, We are not learning from you as a guinea pig in the context of withholding from you treatment. In fact, what we know with clinical trials is those people who enroll on clinical trials who even don't get the X drug or who gets the experimental drug tend to do better even if they don't receive, hear this now, the study drug. You're like, Dr. Winn, how's that even possible? Well, it's possible because what happens is you have not only extra eyes, extra attention, but there are extra resources that are actually poured into people who are actually part of our clinical trials. The reality is we too, as clinicians, want to make sure that we have women that would have given up and were given up for hope 20 years ago with stage 4 breast cancer, who happen to have a molecular signature called HER2/neu, are now benefiting from our therapies. In my lifetime, I've gone from having to give the talk that I learned at the University of Michigan as a young medical student to lung cancer patients, because at that time we only really had one drug, and you could roll the dice of whether that drug was going to work or not. It was called cisplatin, and it was the best we had. It was right for people at that time to come in and say, Doc, what's my chances? And for me to be honest with you and says, well, the best chance is the drug. And their next question would be, well, will it work? And my next real answer would be, I don't know. We've gone from that in my lifetime to understanding now that we're having immunotherapy and molecular targeted therapy, that when someone comes in to me with advanced lung cancer right now, I sort of say, why are you hanging your head? But here's the rub. Most of these miracle drugs are not benefiting the African-American community. In part because, as Nadine Barrett and others have just identified, most of the time, there's an assumption that African Americans won't participate in clinical trials or won't participate in gaining access to our new drugs. The devil is a liar. And as you see the slide here with Nadine Barrett and others, we refer to this as just ask. It's crazy to me that we even have literature from back in the 70s and 80s that's erroneous, by the way, that says African Americans, clearly in bold letters, do not want to participate in trials, and African Americans are afraid to getting cutting-edge new therapies. It ain't what I said, y'all, it's what has been said. I'm sure those people were well-meaning. But here's the power of asking. When you see your doctor, not on the second visit, but when the family members and you hear the word, you have cancer, the very next question, the power of asking, is if the standard of care does not work, doctor, where do I get access to trials for my cancer? It shouldn't be a conversation at the end. It should be a conversation in the beginning so that we can all make plans. The power of asking is to say, doctor, if you can't give those medicines here, are there other partnerships and other places that you work with where if the standard fails and if I'm at the end of my road, I can actually get one more shot in the context of trials? The answer should be yes. But for many of our communities, we have conditioned ourselves into understanding that you can't know what you don't know. It's not our fault for many of the folks in our community why we're not asking. We've never been told. I liken this to the issue of going back to middle school. And I know some of y'all know the Gap Band song, got your back up against the wall while you're not there. You know what the song I'm talking about. It turns out in middle school, I'm telling on myself, but I was not getting many dances. In fact, there would be times where they would have these school dances where I ain't danced all night long. I had to dance with myself. When I go back in time, though, it wasn't because people weren't willing to dance, as I found out. It's because I was afraid to ask, because I was afraid to be told no. Or it was because I had already assumed that when I asked to dance, someone was going to tell me no. Guess what? That's what we've been doing in the medical profession for a very long time. We've justified this by some literature that, written by, I'm assuming, many people who didn't understand that the reality is you have to first ask me before I tell you no and not making any assumptions. The second lesson from middle school was that on the occasion when I did get a chance and got up the courage to ask, I would have told myself no. In retrospect, I'm not even thinking about it. I would have told myself no because I sounded crazy. I wasn't talking and trying to connect with the person. I had to say so much that I spoke over them or spoke at them or really just sounded crazy. Like it, the kind of crazy, like, well, let me just be honest, I ain't had no game. So, I did sound crazy. At that time, I didn't have my Charlie Wilson on. I couldn't say, hey, girl, how you doing? My name is Charlie, last name Wilson. I didn't have that. There was no such thing as smoothness. There was no such thing as understanding the science of connecting with that person that I was talking to. Interestingly enough, I think we are in the science field and in the medical field guilty as charged of sounding crazy. We speak at you, we speak over you, but we never connect with you in a way that you would say, I understand that. And once you've understood, you have the right to say yes or no. But what happens frequently is that, one, we never ask, and two, when we ask, it sounds crazy, and we say, well, we don't want to participate with that. In fact, I had a patient recently. Someone said to me that, Doc, had they just told me what you said, that once you've reached the end of the road with the standard of care, then the things that are left is the option for actually having potentially life-saving and potentially game-changing clinical trial drugs. Nobody said that. And Doc, by the way, nobody told me that I wouldn't be getting some placebo. Had they said that, man, I would have, and by the time they may have said that, but by the time they came at me, I didn't understand what they were talking about. He goes, had someone just explained to me that, yo, we're not taking away medicine. We're giving you the standard. And by the way, we're giving you the standard of care. And you're getting even more people to watch you while you're on this trial. And by the way, if you get the miracle drug and it works, come on now. And if it doesn't work, we still learn something. It ain't that Black folks don't want to go on to clinical trials. It is the recognition of the history of trials. And number two, the recognition that I'm trying to bring to bear that we have to do a better job as a scientific community in asking and explaining. But number three, we have to get in our neighborhoods, rural, urban, independent of what denominations. Our faith-based leaders have to be, I think, more equipped with understanding that ain't nobody experiment on nobody now these days. It really is giving access to care. I sit with you in this space because I have seen witnessed, if you will, with my own eyes, the transformational change of when I have sisters and brothers who ultimately said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for actually this, being part of a trial. And now I'm 6 years out and they told me that I would be gone in a month. Now, that's not to mean that every trial and every access to any new drug is going to work out all the time. That would be a lie. But it is to say that when you're armed with the knowledge of understanding that the system ain't just out to get you, the system is useless to you if you don't know how to use it. All I'm doing is just trying to bring the good news to you. That if you ask the following questions, Doc, what is the standard of care? What can I expect? If the standard doesn't work, then what do I have access to? And by the way, if you're in a community hospital or if you're in a rural area, to just simply ask, who are your partners? Because if the standard doesn't work, how can I get access, transportation, or how can I bring that potential miracle to my doorsteps and to me? For years, decades, we have not been at the table. And as a result of not being at the table or setting the table, we've been on the menu. Frequently being carved up and ignored. The power of asking is the following. The power of asking equals your power. Your power to not only be able to ask, but demand that people give you the information that ultimately many others have access to. And that doesn't mean that Dr. Google and Dr. TikTok are useless. That would be an overstatement. But it would also be an overstatement that when you go to Dr. TikTok and Dr. Google, how do you manage the conflicting data that says, again, for some people, don't take the mRNA vaccine because ultimately they're trying to put a chip in you and they're trying to, come on, y'all, we got to stop all that. I had a conversation during COVID with someone about this and talking about just the vaccine. And I know this is a little off topic, but same sort of general sense, and said, well, they just trying to do this to track me. And I said, yo, partner, you got a cell phone? He said, hey, yeah, man, I absolutely got a cell phone. I said, man, do you turn it off? No, man, I keep that on. And as soon as I said that, you said, what? You don't think anybody know where you at? By the way, when you tell me you're afraid of needles and you all tatted up, quit playing with me. There are such things as objective facts. Toni Morrison once says, to change the status quo, you have to not just do something different, but do a different thing. I'm asking you and our faith-based leaders to do a different thing and give the message and the power of asking, not just about your health, but about the access to some of our cutting-edge therapies and trials. I know what was. And I know, like any relationship, or so I'm told, is that if you stay in the hurt and pain and you can't move and you can't grow, then ultimately you don't wind up with the benefits either. I know the hurt and pain that our science community, our medical community has inflicted on all of us, including my family. But like any relationship, time has moved. And all I want is for our communities to have access to the same benefits that I have seen from many other communities by simply asking what is right to be yours. How can I benefit if the standard stops working? A simple question, a powerful question, and one that has direct impact in most cases on your health. I want to thank all of you for giving me the time and sharing some of my thoughts about hope and the power of our community and just simply asking questions. As the only African-American Cancer Center director in 2019, up until 2022, I have to say that it was frustrating for me to be able to see the progress made, and particularly the progress made in breast cancer in some cases, and prostate cancer and colorectal cancer, and the fact that we are able to not only screen early, but when we actually even got you late, you didn't just have to pray about it. We actually had something we can do about it. I'm going to encourage you all, as we have with Facts, Faith, and Friday here in Richmond, where our faith is not at war with facts. In fact, I think Father Hesburgh said it better than anybody, where he said, science and religion are not at war with one another unless there is either bad science or bad religion. We have a wonderful opportunity to improve our health. We have a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of the system where we are encouraging us to find the cancer early, because finding it early is still our best shot of not dying from, not even surviving, but thriving with cancer. But here's the deal. I still have communities and folks telling me, oh, I'm in stage, ain't nothing I can do about this. I'm just going, for what? It means that you don't know what you don't know, and that your doctor may not know what he or she does not know. And that is that there is hope, and it's right around the corner, if you ask. Thank you for letting me be with you. And I look forward to many years of our partnerships. And I can't say enough about the folks that have put this together, because they are just, as you well know, trailblazers. I mean, they're doing it and actually having our health, particularly in the Black church, understanding that this is where we is the center and the foundation of how we move. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of the conference. And again, I just want to say how honored I am to have been a part of it. Appreciate you guys.